Hello there, this is Matthew Herzberg. You're listening to the Myopia Mindset. What I have for you this week is a clip from part 2 of my series with Dr. Cary Herzberg, Ortho-K Success, What Fitters Often Overlook. Just a preview into what subscribers are getting over on our Substack. If you believe in myopia management and it's the greatest thing in the world like we do, if you would like to support my efforts in spreading the word about it and having on amazing guests to have these discussions, please consider becoming a subscriber. You can do so at myopiamindset.substack.com. It's only $12 a month, which is basically the cost of a cup of coffee each and every week. And hey, I like to say, if you would buy me a cup of coffee to have on amazing guests, to nerd out about myopia management, to talk about Ortho-K, to spread the word so that more ECPs learn how to do myopia management and find their confidence and excel at it, then please consider becoming a subscriber. myopiamindset.substack.com. Thank you so much for your consideration. Here's the clip.
That's a resource that I would promote again. If you the other thing is, I think one of the disconnects here is that you get into this thing. It's not a hobby. It's not. You don't dabble at this stuff, man. If you're into dabble, forget it. Just wash. Just go do something else.
Fishing is a hobby. Collecting trains is a hobby. Playing racquetball is a hobby. You know what I mean? Like playing, beer league hockey or whatever. Is a hobby. Like, this can't be a hobby. This has to be like your thing.
You're in it to win it.
Yeah.
There's no other solution here. Yes. You got
let playing video games be a hobby. This is something else.
Yes. Let's take it seriously.
And take it from the opposite point of view too. Like, if you were getting a house custom designed, if you were paying a designer to work on something customized to your needs, we're not talking about the run-of-the-mill thing. We're talking about something that's customized to you. You would want them to take their time.
Oh my God, yeah.
If they didn't get it right, you'd want them to try it again. And you want to have the confidence in them that, like, hey, we're all human. We don't do everything perfectly, but that person is going to try to get it right to the best of their ability.
Oh my God, yeah. And when you see another professional that's doing that job, you're just in awe of that. It says, yeah, I want to do that in my field. I want to do that like he does it. My field, as thorough as she does it in her field, documentation, everything else, explanation, simplifying because I always felt my patients need to understand what I understand.
Right.
So we took a whole generation of patients and multiple generations, and taught them how to do microns instead of diopters. Of when they ask how their vision changed, okay. We're saying, no, we want to get, we're going to learn how to do this. We're not going you've learned how to do -3 to, -3.25, what that means. Now I'm going to teach you what preventive care means. So we taught them the microns, how to deal with your micron changes in the cornea, in the eye length, eye size, and how that's going to impact, and what we're looking at, and how that helps us manage your case and stay ahead of the myopia change that might happen with your diopter change.
Yeah.
So it's a total education thing with those patients. So, these are things that it's good for the doctors to hear this, because I want them to think about that. I want them to look at those cases. It's not something you can just cross off. I want you to look at the case. Your staff gets through, they'll spend all kinds of time with the patient. They do all that testing you ask.
Right.
Doing topography, right? Look at it.
Yeah.
Analyze it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason. Impress yourself too, that how much further you've come, just in a short period of time as you learn these things, which are pretty straightforward. The stuff we talked about today, this is bread and butter stuff. This is basic stuff that, I know that they don't get this, but that's why we're talking about it. Look at these things for your cases. It's going to make you a better doctor. It's going to open your eyes a little bit when you look at things, and you're going to appreciate it more, because you're going to look at cases and say, that one took forever and this one was real fast.
Can we talk about like common pitfalls, especially if they're in relation to, volume and diameter and corneal shape? Because I think that's really valuable. You don't know what you don't know. So, like, what are the common pitfalls when it comes to these three things?
Because you look at your lens designs. There are lens designs out there that that are using, and we talk about microns. There are lens designs that have adjustments that are very large, between lens designs, 15, 20 microns, whatever it is. You can't get the job done today in Ortho-K unless you're dealing with small increments. I've seen in my own cases where even 5 microns, I've changed a fit 5 microns. I've had a successful fit on a patient, and I've changed that fit, just tweaked it. It turned out to be 2.5 to 5 microns. It totally went south. It's like, what happened here? So yeah, accuracy. Okay. You're dealing with a product that, your lab can make that lens design within microns of accuracy. Okay. Now,
right.
I think we're talking about 5 microns or so, 5 to 10 microns of accuracy. Well, there's nothing else in your practice that's that, even your lasers are at the outside of that. Okay. So this is the most accurate instrument you're dealing with, that lens that's made to those specifications. So why would you put all that great things you've done for that patient, you take on all these testing, and you've made all the measurements and you're right there with them, everything's been done top drawer, then go to something that's not going to reflect that, So that's one thing I would say.
Yeah.
Be very conscious of the fact that these different designs are different and some are better than others.
And you need to understand why that is.
Yes.
And you should use as many designs as you can get your hands on.
Yes.
And learn as much as you can about them.
Yeah. Yeah. We did a podcast with Matthew Martin and Paul, and he's showing us a picture of his trial sets that he learned years ago when we met in that elevator, and he asked me about that, the moment that everything changed for him.
Yeah.
Put it on eyes, kinds of things. I still, trial sets are kind of, doctors don't use them as much as they used to. And I understand why. It's a lot easier to do it, just take the topography and figure it out from there with the software and whatever, or use that to, when you're doing consults or whatever. But still, there's an advantage to putting a lens on an eye. Okay.
Right.
You can see a lot of different things. You can see the responses to the patient. You can see the lid actions. You can see other things that go on. So I would say the first thing is to get real accurate with this thing and demand the same accuracy. Yeah. So if you're dealing with designs that are already telling you that their parameters are this far apart between choices, that's not going to work. I mean, you're talking about lenses that have 3 to 5 microns of accuracy. That's on the outside. It's probably better than that. As far as when you specify something that's going to be made, it's that close to that. And I'm telling you that 5 microns will make a difference and have your fit go south. And then there are designs out there that are, that you don't have, the choices are so far apart, you can't really, they don't really work that well. So that makes, put yourself in a spot to win. Okay. We want to win at this thing, right? We want our patients to win. Yeah. Okay. We want our practice to win. It's a win-win thing, but let's surround ourselves with this winning attitude, this winning thing. Yeah. So let's find those tools that we need. And that's why going to conferences like AAOMC is so important. Again, we come back to the same thing, because you're going to get that pedigree. Yeah.
If I had to add something to the conversation at this point, because you mentioned the first thing, the thing I would add, I learned this from you. So is make sure if a fit's not working correctly, start going after the usual suspects, right? And we talked about some of them. So like, make sure HVID is measured correctly. Right. Make sure you have the proper diameter, right? Start looking at all of these different things. This is why it's super important to take multiple topography images.
Right.
And
be accurate with them.
Like, you want to be able to track that data. You want to make sure you have good data, right? What's the saying? Garbage in, garbage out.
That's right.
So, when I would look at cases, and you were the one that taught me this. So like when I would look at cases and try to figure out what the problem was, it's like, well, let's start looking at all the usual suspects, and I can't tell you how many times diameter was the issue. I can tell you, like you already know this, right? But I saw it real life. I grew up with him telling me these things, and then I got to see it like right in front of me. And,
Well, here, talking about diameter,
yeah.
let's just focus on that for a minute.
Okay.
Larger diameters are tighter. This
Mm-hmm.
is common. This is intuitive. Smaller diameters are looser. So you automatically, if you're fitting a lens that's not the correct diameter, let's say it's too small, it's going to be predominantly a loose fitting lens, unless you're so far off in your measurements, you're fitting it too steep to begin with. That lens is going to be loose because it is, by definition, a flatter fit. Consequently, when you go to larger lens designs, they do fit snugger. They are steeper. So you need to be, very aware that you'll be less aggressive as far as some of the changes you make, because the diameter is correct. So you won't need to, go into that. So you're automatically, if you're off diameter, you're not fitting. The lens is not fitting. So that's really important to understand, because there's so much noise out there as far as diameter. You want to understand Bill Burke never told us this secret. I always wanted, he says there's a perfect lens for every eye. Bill never got, to the end of that lecture.
We never found out what it was.
I never figured that out from Bill, but I love him dearly, but there's a correct diameter, and that's it. Okay. Now, okay. You can, we have some variation, 92 to 95%. Okay. Is pretty good, when you get into that realm, but anything on either side of that, if your HVIDs are measured correctly, you're going to be, your diameter's not quite accurate enough, and that's going to create changes in the fit. You just have to be aware of that the correct diameter is the correct fit.
Yeah, so, and if you have to change a diameter after the fact, depending on how you're changing it, is going to potentially steepen and flatten that fit. And then that's kind of a whole other thing you have to start accounting for. And that's why that's one of the many reasons why it's super important to get that diameter correctly, because
absolutely
it's a different
essential
ball game if you have to change the diameter after the fact.
Okay, so the other thing that people get confused about is they say, well, if that's the case, then how come I nailed that fit, and it was a small diameter, right?
Yeah.
Ortho-K can fit about 80% of your patients really well, 70 to 80% of them well. You could take any kind of brand name off the shelf and fit a patient. This is how successful Ortho-K is. It has nothing to do with how correct your fit is. It's the fact that Ortho-K will cover that up. Is it the most optimal fit? That you had to argue about that one. So you can actually nail a fit off, everything's off. Right. It can work because you get those 80%. It's those other 20% that drive us batty. Okay. Those are the ones that you really need to learn how to do this, because those 20% are going to test your patience. If you don't do this correctly, don't learn, because those are the ones I didn't go into this game to fit 80% of my patients successfully and lose out on the other 20%. I went in for 100%. So I won't accept anything that isn't that,
But that's good news for somebody starting out. Like,
they can still be successful.
Builder.
Yeah.
I wish I had said that in the past. Like, hey, look.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the 80% of the time, we're going to get something that's functional.
Yeah. It's going to work.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah. So it's still going to work, but it's I always, you're in this, you're dealing with the gold standard, maybe gold standard is in the platinum standard, whatever you use the thing that illustrates the top of the line. Ortho-K is the best there is for myopia management. There isn't anything that's close to it, other than 1% atropine, and then 1% atropine has a rebound, which Ortho-K doesn't have. So, you're going to get that 80 to 90% control if you work at this thing. I mean, truly, doctors are getting those zones. They talk about Ortho-K being like 60%, 55% successful. My site's around 55, 60%. But again, that's the 80%, guys. I mean, there's another 20% out there that you can actually increase. Then there may be a way that you can, there are other soft lenses, multifocal soft lenses designs, which we could talk about as some other thing for myopia management that work with these principles again.
Certainly.
That were started by Ortho-K. Ortho-K is the model. But here is a tool within your toolbox that you can get, you can pretty much get there with your patients, if you want to.
Yeah.
And so I always felt, just do this the right way, learn these things, these principles, the things we're going to be talking about in follow-up podcasts about, these pearls that are invaluable for doctors. I learned them over 50 years of practice. Here they are, just we're giving them to you.
Yeah. If you're interested in getting the rest of the episode, consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset. In addition to an extended version of this episode and every other episode that we do, you'll also get access to exclusive monthly bonus episodes of the Myopia Mindset. And I know you're interested. You've made it this far. You can do so on our Substack, myopiamindset.substack.com. I'll see you at the next one.